with my case. So I'm going to share a case where we did lot of interventions. So let us see whether anyone has any different opinion to it. So this was a case. Okay. So this was a case, basically a 30-year-old male who had come to us after his road traffic accident. He had this post-traumatic mydriasis. At that point in time, he had corneal edema, increased intraocular pressure. He also at this point in time had a corneal epithelial defect. So initially we managed him with lubricating drops with anti-glaucoma medications to control his IOP and with steroids for the whatever reaction he had, and because of that he had this corneal edema. So once we were done with this and when he healed, he had this little bit of haze on the corneal surface. So what we did was, although I do not have that particular portion in this video of mine, is we went ahead with PTK for this patient. So after we did the PTK, we did around 80 or 100 microns PTK, and after that we 3 months post PTK we took him for the operation. Patient had not a very dense cataract, but his anterior lens capsule was opacified. He also had uncontrolled glaucoma and he was having a severe post-traumatic mydriasis. So when we took him for a case, initially I removed the scraped off the epithelium for a better localization, and we made the superiorly we made this partial thickness scleral flap.
Shikta, if I can just interrupt for a second, sorry, could you just let us know the reason for performing PTK, because I think most of us are not very
yeah, so basically after because this patient, if initially you saw, he had a lot of corneal edema and epithelium, so when he healed, he unfortunately healed with lot of corneal haze. So now if we go ahead with the surgery without addressing cornea, he may not still have a good visual acuity because of that. Doing PTK post surgery, like there are two ways. You can do cataract, see whether he has got a good vision and then deal with it. The unfortunate part in that is PTK will cause a slightly hyperopic shift, and that cannot be, then you need to give glasses or something like that. So what I planned is, because there was a haze, let's do PTK, and it was a superficial haze. So you can take care of these haze with PTK. So you just ablate the initial 100 microns after epithelial removal, and you let it heal for 3 to 4 months. So by that time his corneal refraction will settle down, and then your intraocular, your biometry will be much better rather than going in just after a month or so. So that was the reason PTK was done before the cataract surgery or before all these interventions. No, you don't have to give contact lenses. Initially, for 3-4 days, if you want to give till the epithelium heals, you can, but it's not must. You just give some lubricating drops, some prophylactic antibiotic, and yes, you do need to give steroids for few weeks. So the trabeculectomy initial part was done, where the flap was made, the MMC was applied. Whenever you apply MMC, make sure that whenever you are putting those soaked swabs of MMC soaked swab, when you are removing it, while putting it, count it before, while removing it again count, because if by mistake also your MMC soaked swab remains, that will cause lot of problems later on, like scleral necrosis and all. So it is very important to count your MMC soaked swabs while putting it and while removing it, and after you remove it you have to have a thorough wash so that the MMC is not there and it will not cause further problems. So once the initial trabeculectomy part has happened, I changed the position and came for the temporal phacoemulsification. So our routine side ports and temporal clear corneal incision was done, and the rhexis was started. At this point in time I will stop here, and if you notice here, there is this a zonular dialysis out here from around 9:30 to 12 o'clock. So this is the area, this is the temporal area. So this is 9:30 to 12 is the zonular dialysis. This is a time when I actually, at this point in time, my rhexis was not moving ahead very smoothly. Again, at this point in time, I just changed it so that my rhexis should not run away, and I wanted that little centripetal force. So you should have a slightly centripetal force and a very small controlled movement so that your rhexis doesn't run away. At this point in time, again I will stop and take Shail's opinion. Do you have any other suggestions? If you have a zonular dialysis. Any other tips for the rexus?
I think the only other thing that we can think if you find lot of difficulty in doing the rexus is that after you start and say you make half or one third of it, you can actually hook up the capsular bag in that area with either soft iris retractors or capsule retractors, so that the bag stabilizes a little bit and you have a little bit more ease in doing the capsular rexus. But that mainly depends on the amount of subluxation and the difficulty that you are feeling during capsular rexus.
Exactly. That was a very nice point. Again, this was not a very severe zonular dialysis, but otherwise, if you have a zonular dialysis, so once and if you could finish rexus without putting the capsular hooks, you can put capsular hooks later on also, that it actually protects your bag and you have less chances of more subluxation while doing phacoemulsification. Do you agree with that, Shell?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So we finished rexus with this little slightly centripetal movement, and again whenever there is a zonular dialysis, forceful hydrodissection should not be done. Luckily this cataract was not very dense, so we could just do hydrodelineation and take this cataract, in fact aspirate with irrigation and aspiration. I did not use any phaco in this particular case. We did not have any increased zonular dialysis with the while doing irrigation and aspiration, because at the other point what I would like to mention out here is, whenever you have such a situation, rather than putting one forceful wave, I think doing multiple quadrants soft hydrodissection waves are much better than doing one wave.
And I think hydrodissection in such cases is extremely important, because you don't want to add any further stress on the zonules while rotating and while manipulating the nucleus. So I think that's a wonderful tip. Multi-quadrant hydrodissection, small amounts of fluids in different areas go a long way.
Yeah. So in view of zonular dialysis, we decided to go ahead with the CTR, which gives you a much better horizontal and anterior-posterior stability. Again, while injecting a CTR, very important point one should keep in mind is, inflate your bag, because if you do not inflate your bag, your CTR will not move in the bag very nicely. So make sure that you put something like a cohesive, I prefer cohesive viscoelastic while inserting the CTR. Is there any different way?
No, I think that's very correct to use a cohesive viscoelastic. In the early on cases of early CTR insertion, sometimes you may, while trying to look at two different ends, sometimes what happens is that the leading end tends to come out and goes in the sulcus, and then once it goes, it's impossible to retrieve it. So in the initial cases, the other trick that we found useful was to just thread this CTR with a 10-0 nylon, so that in case if you are not sure, or if you feel this has gone out of the bag, you can easily pull it out even if it has been completely dialed inside.
Oh, that's a wonderful tip. The other thing what I generally do is, while putting the second end of the CTR, I take two instruments. One is your dialer and the other one is your Sinskey hook. So what I do is, I generally support my CTR with the dialer, put the Sinskey hook in the eyelet, and with the help of these two instruments, I very slowly try to put that end inside the bag. Because this is where I have noticed, and I've had these situations before, that many a times if I don't use two instruments, the second end inadvertently goes into the sulcus, and again, as Shail mentioned, it's very difficult to retrieve the CTRs once they go into the sulcus. Any other tip would you like to give, or how do you do it? Do you use any instruments?
Yeah, so generally I prefer two Lester hooks, which are like a bulbous end. So while inserting, you just hook up that hook so that you make sure it actually goes below the capsular bag. And like Dr. Sheetal very correctly showed, the left hand tries to support when you are pushing the ring in, so that it doesn't cause excessive stress on the zonular bag. And once the actual hole of the CTR actually reaches the lip of the incision, then you can actually hook it up with a dialer or a Lester hook and keep it pressed posteriorly. Because if you worry that you want to dial it in perfectly, you tend to lift up your right hand, and then that tends to come off, and that can go in the sulcus. So with the dialer or the Lester hook, keep it hooked and keep it as if you want to go posteriorly, and then push down and rotate. So you'll always make sure that it doesn't slip out at any point of time.
Exactly. So we move ahead with this case, and then the lens implantation was much easier. Again, in this case, I could have put single piece lens also. But somehow this is my own choice that whenever there's a zonular dialysis, I prefer using multi-piece lenses. Although I'm not sure, at least the ones which I use, the multi-piece lenses are spherical one. That's the only point which maybe I could have done out here was put a spherical lens as well, which could have done pretty well. So after doing this, now this particular a huge.
Just
sorry.
another point, sorry to interrupt. I think that's a very important point that Dr. Sheetal made about the aspheric and the spheric lenses. So aspheric lenses are excellent and they are very good provided they are well centered in the capsular bag. So in case of any doubt, when you feel that the centration of the capsular bag is not likely to be ideal or is likely to change, it's better to go for a spherical IOL rather than an aspheric IOL, because a decentered aspheric IOL will cause more aberrations or drop in the quality of vision compared to a spherical or a zero or neutral kind of an IOL. So either a 3-piece or a single piece, your IOL of choice, but a spherical IOL if you feel that the bag centration is likely to be suboptimal.
Totally agree, because in fact there are a lot of studies that the aspherical IOLs are like your multifocals. If they are decentered, they'll cause a lot of coma and eventually cause glare and decrease visual quality of visual acuity. So at this point in time, what I'm trying to do is with this blunt dialer, I'm trying to mobilize the iris so that whatever pupil comes down, I was just trying to check out whether pupil comes down mechanically. So with that instrument, I could just like sweep it because there was hardly any iris rim I could see it. After that, what I planned was mechanically kind of pull the iris with the microforceps so that to see whether the pupil comes down and whether we can avoid doing pupilloplasty. But pupil did not really come down very well, but before doing any pupilloplasty, I would still say that this is a good way to do it. So at least you get some amount of tissue where you can thread in your needle and suture. So this is a purse string pupilloplasty. So basically I'll just give you an idea. Purse string pupilloplasty is generally done with the double arm 10-0-Prolene or 9-0-Prolene. I would prefer now after this case a 10-0-Prolene. This what I am using out here is a 9-0-Prolene, but what I realized is 9-0-Prolene, the needle is slightly blunt. So it takes, especially it causes little more iris trauma. So I think a 10-0 is a much better choice rather than 9-0. Make sure that it's a double armed one and you're not cutting any thread in between. So here we are going, this is temporal. So from nasal I started, I put one needle. The curved needle is a better idea, but I did not have a curved needle, so I just with a holder, needle holder, I curved it mechanically. So once you go inside from the side port, you need to take iris tissue bites through your needle. So take some maybe 3-4 small bites in one quadrant. If you notice, this patient had a lot of iris damage actually. While taking the iris bites, I noticed that iris was getting torn a lot. But I anyway still moved it because the pupil was so big that I could not keep the pupil just like that. So once you've taken 3-4 bites, this needle needs to be retrieved from the inferior side port, that is the side port which is 90 degrees away from it. So with the help of 26 gauge needle, you retrieve the needle out, and again through the same side port introduce your needle so that you can handle the other quadrant. Again, same thing you need to do is take help of your microforceps to pull the iris and take small bites. So this quadrant we did the same. I was having this problem because of blunt needle as well as because of the iris which was inherently very damaged and very thin. So whenever I was going, it was causing a bit of issue over there. So now this needle, once you introduced here, you took 3-4 bites and it comes through your main port. Similar thing you need to repeat from the other arm. Now this needle what is there is not the same needle, it is the second arm of your 9-0-Prolene. So the second arm goes from the opposite one from where we introduced first, and you take care of these two quadrants exactly in a similar manner. We took care of these two quadrants. So once all your quadrant, now your 180 is covered by one side of the needle, the other 180 is covered by the other side of the needle. This iris was very floppy actually. Maybe at this point in time, the better idea would be give one suture out here on your main port before even doing all this thing. So anyways, with the iris spatula, I put the iris inside. So before tying your knots, make sure that your iris tissue is inside, otherwise you will not get a good this thing. So once your both the needle threads are out from your main port, you just have to pull it so it comes and bunches into one. So this is like a purse string, like a purse. You are just pulling the strings. This is known as a purse string, the pupilloplasty. So whatever size you want, you can do it. Keeping in mind that this patient had trauma, he has glaucoma, I did not want to make a pinhole pupilloplasty, which would have given him a much better vision maybe. So what I feel is to have a kind of around 4 millimeter, 5 millimeter pupil, which is not very huge, which is not very small for the retinal examination as well as the optic disc examination, which he will be requiring it in all the follow-up visits because of his glaucoma status. So once you've done whatever size you've decided and you've given the knots, you can just cut those with the help of your micro scissors. The visco was aspirated at this point in time. And again we came back to the finishing the trabeculectomy now. So this is what I prefer for my trabeculectomy. I do the full dissection and dissection, and when I did the iridectomy, what I noticed was there was a sudden gush of the fluid. I did not realize at that point in time that that was vitreous. I thought that was the fluid from the AC, but again when I was just doing it, I realized that total vitreous blob was there. So I just cut that particular blob with the help of the vanas, and we did the limited vitrectomy going through that similar window. Now if you remember, I had shown you this was the area where there was the zonular dialysis. So basically this is from where the vitreous came out the moment we did the trabeculectomy. Maybe another thing is, although I did not face any problem while doing the phacoemulsification or while implanting the IOL, maybe there was a good idea is to inject triamcinolone and make sure that whether there was any vitreous already present. If it was there, we could have taken care of at that point in time, and maybe this could have been avoided. So anyways, once your thing is done, you can, this becomes like your pars plana vitrectomy actually, because you've already made a window from there and you do a pars plana vitrectomy in this case. And then the suture was given. This is just a normal trabeculectomy. It was finished with a tenonylon, the scleral this thing as well as the conjunctival suturing. I prefer tenonylon again for my conjunctiva also. So this is the post-op of my case. This was the 4 months post-op where there was a functioning bleb, and the IOP was without any without any medications, was maintaining at around 14 to 15 mmHg, and this is the size of pupil which we achieved. Now at this case, the patient's glare had drastically reduced, although it was not completely off glare, because if you had noticed there was some iris atrophic patches which would give glare, but it was much better than what he had earlier, and his vision was 6/9 best corrected with some 0.75 cylindrical power. So in this case, sometimes when we see cases post-trauma, I think we should not take them immediately for any one particular surgery and go in stepwise manner. Like this case, we did medical management, then do your PTK, and then these things either you do combined or you can go ahead sequentially depending on how your comfort level is. Thank you so much.